That means that I have global responsibility for setting the technology strategy and supporting the technology goals of our customers with regards to government, education, and healthcare. Just to give you an idea of the size of that business for Microsoft, it's about 156 million desktops that we support on a daily occurrence. It's roughly 1/3 of our enterprise business. Now, I'm based out of Redmond, Washington, so out of the Seattle area. I've lived there for about 1 year. Prior to this position within Microsoft, I spent 5 years working for Microsoft in Washington, D.C. with the U.S. federal government organization. To give you a little bit more background so you understand the perspective of how I approach technology, prior to my time at Microsoft, I spent 10 years at Oracle. 3 of those years I actually spent as a teacher. So I'm a technologist by trade. I taught data modeling, database architecture, database design. One of those years I was fortunate enough to spend teaching in Central and South America. In fact, I spent a bit of time teaching in Mexico and other locations. And one of the things that I found was that the people in this room have more impact on technology than what comes out of our development shops. In fact, if you look at the development shops for Microsoft, for Oracle, for Google, for Apple, for IBM, and you combine all of that technology capability, there's a lot of amazing technology that's being rolled out. But it's the implementation of that technology that actually allows the next level of computing to occur. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is when I look at what the future held for me 25 years ago when I was in the university level, I was expecting a very different world than I see today. I was expecting a world where I could step outside of my home into a car and fly to work. I was expecting meals where I could sit down and eat a tablet, and it would be my entire meal and I wouldn't gain any weight. I was also expecting access to information to be available to me on any type of device at any point in any location, regardless of whether I needed certain security credentials or not. The interesting thing is, of those 3 things I just mentioned, one of them is actually here and available today. And it's that ubiquitous access to information. And I think it's important that we all think about technology and how we embrace that technology obviously when I have my discussion, but as you continue on with the event. This is an amazing event that's going on. I've had wonderful conversations from a professional point and from a personal point. And I'm actually looking forward to my next trip back down to Tijuana. So the world is actually changing, and it's changing very quickly. And the reason this is important for us to understand is things are changing from a technology point of view in ways that I don't think any of us really expected. In fact, 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have expected the types of technologies available in the hands of people for the price, or within the price points that are available, whether it's from Microsoft or any other technology company. I just didn't expect that change would occur at the speed at which it's occurring. What's happening is technology is changing at the speed of the internet. Now, Microsoft's a company of 93,000 employees. Where I'm based in Redmond, Washington, the environment is set up like a university campus. We have approximately 100 buildings on campus with about 40,000 people. We do a lot of our development and engineering. We do some levels of support. We have sales, marketing operations. We do finance. So we're a very large organization that is run in a very community-oriented way. Well, when you look at change and you look at the effect of how change occurs, what you begin to notice is that change occurs based upon how people interact with each other. And if you look back in time to where people were geographically located and how they began to interact with each other and how the goal of society was for people to have instant access to collaboration, whether it was for business purposes, financial purposes, or personal purposes, people had the desire to collaborate. What society does is it brings technology with it. It drags technology along so that the opportunity to collaborate in these types of world mimics society. And if you look at technology and you look at the evolution of technology, and in fact, I love this slide because I come from the mainframe world. I'm an old COBOL programmer from many, many years ago. Worked for a large oil company, and my job, actually, the first job I had there was I actually wrote the software that controlled valves and pipelines. Very, very exciting work. The beauty of that model, though, was I learned the basics of a methodical approach to programming, really understanding what the ultimate goal was and then what all of the variables would be along the way. I also learned to understand what impact I as an individual would have upon that process. Because I didn't own the pipelines, I didn't manage the actual pipeline, I managed the software for those pipeline systems while it was being developed. I then turned it over to other people that actually ran them in maintenance. The interesting thing was that when I was working on those projects, that was about 20 years ago. In those 20 years, that system has been upgraded from COBOL to newer versions of COBOL. It's moved from mainframe operating systems to newer versions of mainframe operating systems. And some of the people that I worked with that were running those systems are still actually running those systems. So while technology changes, the people that are involved in some of these processes don't always change. What does change are the influencers upon the process or upon the technology. And this is one of the areas where I think a lot of people, when they look at technology, they don't look at what the external influencers are and how they approach technology and the changes to technology. In fact, I'm one of those people that says that Microsoft, that we as employees of Microsoft, we don't have the right to declare our technology innovative. We have the right to say that we're developing technology that hopefully will be used in innovative ways. That's our ultimate goal. And when you look at all of the different organizations that are influencing how technology evolves, not just from a development point of view, or not just from a social interaction point of view in a consumer-based world or an enterprise, you start looking at things like your family members. So I have an older brother, and my older brother is very conscientious of data privacy and data protection. He has a 5-year-old little girl, and he's very concerned about making sure that images that are posted are only being posted for, or to people that he's given explicit access to. Well, I started using Facebook about 2 years ago, so I could actually collaborate with some of our friends and family that didn't live in the same geographic area and sharing photos. And I would send my brother invitations to join Facebook so he could participate in our life. Well, not only did he not want to post photos in Facebook, he didn't even want a Facebook account because he didn't understand what was happening with the data that was out there. And I completely understand the concern and the goals because without users using technology responsibly, we run into issues around data privacy and data protection. So we have to understand ultimately what we're trying to derive. We also have to understand back to who those influencers are. Now, realizing I deal with government, education, and healthcare day in and day out. You have to imagine all of the different issues we run into that with regards to policy, with law, with politics, with risk. And every day I have conversations with C-level people around the world, and the same questions always come up. Where is the line that says I can use services that are publicly available versus privately available? And the line will move back and forth depending upon who within the government organizations I speak with. I typically will speak with the legislators because they make the law. Legally, if they're not in compliance, people go to jail, or at least will lose their jobs. There's also a group that make policy. And unfortunately, the policy and the legislation don't always match each other. In fact, policy is typically a bit stricter than law. So the law may allow certain things that policy doesn't. We have to make sure that we're bringing those groups together to influence or to allow their influence to govern how the systems are going to be used. It's a constant conversation that has to occur, but it's a good conversation. It's a healthy conversation. Now, I know the audience is made up of people from the education space, so there are a lot of students that are here. There are people from the small and mid-sized business. There are people from government space that are here. And I want to make sure everybody realizes the statements I make aren't geared specifically towards government. Because think about it. When you look at policy and law and regulations, we're talking about the financial markets. We're talking about the health industry and how we deal with things like insurance claims and services. We look at law enforcement. We look at defense forces. We look at intelligence services. All of these organizations are influencers in how we approach data and how we access data in a public or a private forum. Now, when we look at technology, really we look at 4 different categories of technology from an evolution point of view and how our technologies in an emerging sense apply to our customer base. And what we've been watching, obviously, for many years is the evolution of the PC or the computing device. And I won't necessarily say the PC, because some people equate a PC to a computer with a monitor, a mouse, a keyboard, in a physical infrastructure, a tower case, however it happens to be, or desktop. We know it also means laptops. We also now, in today's world, understand that it means the concept of a slate, which is obviously a computer that doesn't carry a mouse and a keyboard in a hard format, so a soft keyboard. Typically you'll find, in fact, the Apple iPad was one of the first really well-adopted devices that's out there. You're beginning to see more adoption on the Android devices from Samsung with the Galaxy devices. And from a Microsoft perspective, when we look at it, we're watching there are, I'm trying to think of the number. There are a large number of slate-based devices that are actually shipping it as part of the holiday edition from the manufacturers, the OEMs. But the PC has evolved, and as that evolution has occurred, there have become access to more information with faster processing capacity, with increased application capabilities, and obviously with certain capabilities that are accessible via a browser-based environment. And we've watched that evolution. I'm actually embarrassed to say that one of the first PCs I had, while it wasn't the PC on the far left, it was pretty close to the second one. The big difference was that was a laptop for me. And it was a compact, and it had a keyboard that clicked onto the front in a little suitcase, and I could pick it up and carry it around. Now, we called it a luggable, not a portable or a laptop, and it weighed about 30 pounds, and it was a difficult situation for us. The model has changed dramatically. In fact, it's changed significantly. And as part of Microsoft, I'm always watching to see who from the consumer space is using what type of device. I get my typical gauge, my public, court of public opinion from coffee shops, from airport lounges, and I look around to see what types of devices are there from Dell or HP or Lenovo or Asus or Acer or obviously from Apple. Which devices, if they're not an Apple-based device, the devices are running things like Android or Chrome, the Chrome OS, which are running Windows, what version of Windows they're running. And I'm just keeping an eye because that's how I take a poll of what's going on within the public. But there is an evolutionary process that's occurring, and it's actually beginning to converge with another area where we spend a lot of focus, and that's on the mobile-based device. Now, in this particular diagram that you're seeing, the phone that is on the far left was my first mobile device. I still actually have that cell phone at home. My wife keeps asking me to throw it away, but I'm very well attached to that particular device. For those of you that have not actually seen a phone like that, the one that's on the left there, it was actually about 8 inches high. With the antenna, it was about 16 inches, so it doubled in size with the antenna. And it was a portable phone, had some very uneconomical charging models. So a typical month for me would be about $150 if I made, say, 5 or 10 phone calls on it. And a big part of it was based on the geographic capabilities that the devices had to consume information. In that sense, it was making telephone calls. Well, as the mobile device has evolved, and specifically on the phone concept, the device has evolved to the point where I can, for the most part, use a small screen device to accomplish a large number of my enterprise requirements. And when I say enterprise, I mean things like email access. I mean access to content. I mean being able to decrypt or unencrypt files that are sent to me where I have the appropriate credentials to have access to these. So I can still function in a business sense with that small screen device. You'll notice I didn't say on a Windows mobile device or a new Windows phone-based device, because the goal is that the small screen device should be able to incorporate the type of applications that are important to you. And we hear that loud and clear every day from a Microsoft point of view, where we're focused on standards and interoperability and security and privacy and all of those, the same types of components. Now, most of you, or hopefully most of you, have heard we have had some major announcements. This past Monday, Steve Ballmer in New York City announced the next generation of the Windows Phone. We're actually watching very closely to see what types of adoption rates there will be, what the percentage numbers will be, where we'll fit in the market, because we're taking a different approach. Our approach is that the small screen device is